Hi there. Builds of the much praised Airfix 24th Spitfire Mk IX have been plentiful since its initial release. However, over the last year or so, a significant range of aftermarket products designed for the kit have hit the market, and the build here is intended to include and evaluate as many of these as possible, whilst producing a conversion from the Mk IX to a Mk XVI. This isn't a quick or easy job, hence the fact that the video has been broken down into two parts. Welcome to part 1. So, what was the Mk XVI? Well, the basic difference between the two marks, the 9 and the 16, was simply the fitting of the US-built Packard 266 Merlin engine to the latter, and types are otherwise so similar that they were initially produced in parallel at Castle Bromwich. However, as time went on, further developments meant that production became more dispersed. These developments included the low back conversion, which we're looking at here, and the adoption of the E-type wing, which will feature in part 2. Here's a look at the aftermarket stuff that I alluded to earlier. There are decals and a range of resin bits from Attitude Aviation, the seat belts and a replacement instrument panel from Edward, and a very interesting looking set of stencils from One Man Army. During the course of this build, we'll be evaluating the lot. Before we start the modifications, let's not forget what an excellent kit the Airfix Spitfire is. Even built straight from the box, it looks very good. Details outstanding, assembly straightforward for such a complex kit, and I was rather loath to start cutting and chopping such well produced parts. Anyway, let's see how it went. The first aftermarket item used in this build was both the easiest to use and the easiest to review. It was the Edward Look replacement instrument panel and seat belt. The cockpit detailing on the standard Airfix kit is very good overall, but the instrument panel is not that convincing, and the separately moulded seat belts, whilst a welcome inclusion, don't really work for me. They don't really match the level of the detail that surrounds them. However, this rather nice Edward item addresses both these issues in one go. The instrument panel is superbly produced and simply fits where the kit item should go. This not only looks better than the standard kit item, but is much easier to use, involving no paintwork or decaling at all. Equally good, although a bit trickier to employ, are the pre-coloured seat belts. These work equally well in the standard high back version or the low back conversion, although the mounting method in the latter is slightly different. With a bit of careful cutting and bending, really pleasing results can be obtained. This set can be highly recommended whether you're doing any further modification or just sticking with the basic Mk IX kit. Things get more serious when we start the low back conversion. The Attitude Aviation set that allows this is a multimedia affair, with the main parts in resin and the smaller ones on a PE fret. The main resin parts are well cast, with an excellent attempt made to match the subtle surface finish of the Airfix kit. They're well designed too. They follow the panel lines on the kit fuselage, which makes cutting and fitting that bit easier. The resin bubble canopy is a beautiful moulding, crystal clear, but with awkwardly placed moulding plugs that need to be removed with great care. There are also a lot of tiny parts that are cast on a resin block, outlined in that rather scruffy red line there. These are much less impressive. They were not very well formed on my sample and would have been much better 3D printed. As it was, a lot of these weren't actually needed, and the others were replaced by scrap PE items left over from other projects. Another issue that arose a bit later was the quality of the instructions. These look fine at first, and up to a point they are. The cutting guide for the port and starboard fuselage sides is good, as is the assembly of the modified bulkhead behind the pilot's seat. This uses the lower part of the kit bulkhead, D11 I think is the part, mated with the resin upper section provided in the set. What it doesn't say are that various other little jobs are required as well, as we shall see later. When undertaking this conversion, the first job was the cutting away of the rear upper sections of the fuselage halves. This wasn't that difficult, and a dry fit of the resin insert suggested a reasonable fit. Then the first 34 stages of constructions were followed as per the kit instructions. The parts added in stage 35 need to be omitted in this conversion. At stage 36 the cockpit tub was fitted and the fuselage halves joined. It was at this point that the resin low back parts were fitted. The Attitude Aviation instructions have the two main resin sections being joined together first and then fitted as a single unit. It's actually better to fit them individually, with the rear one first. Essentially, it's easier to fit two smaller sections than a single larger one. A lot of careful filling and blending is required to get the right fit. Do the rear one first. Once that's right, the forward section can be added. Again, although the fit is okay, a lot more filling and blending is required to get a perfect fit and ensure the correct contouring of the rear fuselage. It takes a long time, but it's the key part of the whole project, and the results rewarded the effort. I said a bit earlier that the Attitude Aviation instructions could be a bit more extensive. Example of what I'm talking about is that they don't say that the two bulkheads further aft of the cockpit tub, part D9 and D10, need cutting down to the height of the tub. Also, the fitting of the radio and oxygen bottles needs modifying if they're to be included in the model at all. In addition, a small section at the top rear end of each side of the cockpit tub needs removing in order for the main conversion parts to fit. You can see that in the photograph as well. Final important point to reiterate is that the low back conversion was carried out on some late Mark IXs and was by no means universal on Mark XVIs, many of which were completed with the standard fuselage configuration. The low back conversion can therefore be carried out as a standalone conversion on the Mark IX, although new serial numbers and squadron codes would obviously be required if you did it with this particular kit. A couple of final points about the Attitude Aviation set. It includes details for the modified headrest that was found on the low back conversion. These items fit very nicely and look rather good. They also include a replacement resin photo etch cockpit access door. This also goes together quite well, and it does provide something of an improvement over the standard kit item. So there's the low back conversion basically done, but there's still quite a lot to come. We've got the E-wing conversion. That's quite a job in itself, as we shall see. We've got the Packard Merlin cowling and exhausts to add. We've got details about the final finishing, the use of the decals, and also have a look at the one-man army stenciling set and see how that shapes up. So as I said, still plenty to come. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you find the video useful, and I hope also that you'll join me for part 2 when we'll get the job finished. Thank you. See you next time.